And welcome to another NA Lit Chat. I'm EJ Wesley. I am joined by Kat Van Sil and LK Lewis, two of my cohorts here with NA Lit Chat. Uh, this is definitely going to be like a little casual, fun audio chat tonight with us. We'll hopefully get some of our Twitter followers to jump in and share some of their experiences and thoughts on our subject tonight, which is main characters, how to create awesome ones, qualities of great ones. Sort of the groundwork that a novel is based around is usually whoever your main character is. So this is kind of the building block step, I think, to most people's projects. And so I don't think we can focus on this enough. But first I want to get to Kat and LK and ask how they're doing. How are you guys tonight?
Good.
Yay.
I'm not deaf.
Right? Deaf or deaf? Dead.
Deaf.
Deaf.
My
I don't think she's either.
My speakers on my computer shorted out, and
I get it.
my ears hurt for a few days.
I was so confused.
Yeah.
I was like, am I shouting?
The public service announcement. Make sure you're not using super old technology,
Right?
because it could short out and try and kill you.
So, okay, you're good. Any of you guys doing any writing work?
Yes, I am proud to announce that freaking finally I finished the first draft of the prologue that I've added to my current WIP. And it has a little bit of tweaking, but I think it was a successful first draft. And so I'm really looking forward to how it's going to shape my book, my next novel. I'm very excited about it, and hopefully we'll have it out by mid-October. It's kind of a rush to do it that way, but I think it could happen. So I'm going to be at Great Lakes Book Bash in Kalamazoo, Michigan, with Casey Bond, who we love, and that's mid-October, and so I'm hoping to be able to release this for that weekend and have it available to everyone that stops by. So I'm really pushing for it, but yeah, so that's my good news, and I've been writing, and yeah, good.
That is good news. Usher Evans, one of our frequent chatters, actually, she's at a book event right now, and so I know you're excited, LK, because this will be your second book event, right? With Utopia being your first. So I'm excited for that too, because I think Utopia, I was a little, and you too probably, but like we were like a little bit flies on the wall, like kind of watching and just kind of seeing, like, what are we supposed to do, and what is this like? So I'm
Why is everyone hugging each other?
Now, because I'm like, okay, I kind of feel like the boss now. I feel like
Yeah. Once you get one under your book and you kind of
Under your book.
Under your book, under your belt, under your book, on the books, under your belt. Am I outside? I can't even talk tonight. What am I doing on audio? Yeah, once you kind of figure it out, and I definitely think Utopia is a great stepping stone for any other possible book events, you kind of get a feel for what to expect. So, yeah.
And Kat, you're obviously a veteran of these big events and things. You go to a lot of cons and stuff.
Yes,
like that.
actually, I think it's next weekend. No, maybe it's the weekend after that. The first few days of September, I will have a weekend, a event every 2 weeks.
Whoa.
I don't know why it's that way in California. It seems in Northern California there are like no events in the middle of the summer. They're all either in leading up to Memorial Weekend or after Labor Day weekend, like one after the other. So planning of how many books am I going to need for 3 events or 4 events or 5 events, because there's not enough time to order them individual in between events.
Oh.
So, I spent the last few weeks ordering, getting new print books made, getting new business cards, getting new book cards, getting new packaging materials for my art, getting a new display, to be ready for this crazy event season.
Well, and I think that's a key point about events is just how much work goes into them. Like, and not just now. I know you do most years like within sort of driving area or whatever, but it doesn't really matter whether it's driving or flying. Like, there's travel hoops to jump through. There's
Yes.
logistical things, like you have to figure out how many books you want to take and figure out all these different things.
Well,
So events aren't like a thing where you just like roll in. And
No.
Some of them have you have to be. Some of them have very specific rules. Like some of them, because of the city's freight union laws, you cannot have a handcart. You have to bring everything in wheelable luggage. Like, there are weird things like that where you're like, well, now I have to own a bunch of suitcases or borrow them from friends.
I think that's key. I think it's smart. Like, you gotta, kind of
Plan.
Yeah,
Lots of
use your
planning.
resources too. Like, I think a lot of us get caught up in like, oh, I need to go buy this or buy that. Well, most of us do events rarely enough that if you happen to know another author or artist or somebody that does events, they may have like some stuff that you could borrow.
Oh yeah, yeah. And other things are like, how many other events are going on in the same area? Are there even any more hotel rooms left?
Right.
Like the event that I do in San Jose during Memorial Weekend, there's the university's graduation, which is the university is like 2 blocks away. You have a convention center that has like 50,000 people. You have a dance competition that's always going on, weddings. It's Memorial Weekend, so you have 100,000 people that are not normally in that area suddenly in that 10-block radius.
So I do want to say, share. We had a little bit of good news from Twitter tonight. Just a little bit trickling in. Patricia Lynn said that she has written over, and it's at plyn_writes. Says that she's written just over 7,000 words these past 3 days. So I'm kind of shamed by you. I haven't written nearly that many. I'm kind of just like wading back into writing, and so I'm just proud. Like, I got like 3 pages out the other day, and it was the most I've written in weeks because of just life craziness. And so I was so excited. I was so proud of myself. I was like, I wrote new things, like things that I've been editing, and trying to stay productive. But like the idea of sitting and just generating something new has been too much. But so I asked the question. The topic tonight is main characters, and what are our favorite ones and what makes a great one and all this stuff. So I posed a question to Twitter a while ago. How many, because I know a lot of people, this is my process, and I think a lot of other people do it, but how many do you start a story with the character? Like, you come up with this idea of this character type, and then you sort of build a story around it. So what about you guys? Like, what's your process? Like, do you come up with a character, like, to put into a shitty scenario, or do you come up with a shitty scenario and then, like, I'll throw this kind of character in?
Go ahead, Kat. Okay. Part of my outline is character development. So I'll even go down to age, hair color, whatever, like physical description, how they dress. I get pretty detailed about my characters and what they're like as part of my outline. I feel like it's actually easier if you completely figure them out and who they are. I find that it's easier to write them. And it might be a little bit easier to do the whole show don't tell because you know that your character might wear heels as opposed to Converse,
Right.
So it's good. It's easier to kind of get a description and stuff as you go.
What about you? What do you start with?
I don't start in any particular way. Like, I don't typically sit down and I'm like, I'm going to write a story. I usually already have bits of a story that I have kind of backlogged from just, it came to me either because a song made me think of it, or some visual thing that I saw, or an incident in my life or something. So I don't really have a process that I always go through, and that's not exactly a good thing. So recently I started going through this book that I heard about on the self-publishing podcast called Take Off Your Pants, and it's by Libby Hawker.
I love it. I'm intrigued. Go on.
It's a book about essentially outlining, but in a way that's slightly different, for especially like more easy for people who are not heavy plotters, that are more pantser types, which is why it's called Take Off Your Pants. So she basically goes into what attracts people to stories, why certain stories resonate with readers more than others, and how to plot your story and outline your story to hit those kind of emotional points that will make your readers enjoy your story better. So I'm going through that with this with some of my new projects to see how that works and if it makes it easier, because my last full-length novel that I did took me 13 months, and I don't want to have to do that again.
Yeah.
Well,
It was miserable.
I think a key to this is the more I get into this writing stuff or whatnot, is that I don't care. Like, you can be a total pantser, that's fine, but have a process. Like, have like a routine, a process, something that you work through. And
Yeah.
these educational books are great for that, because like you'll find one on anything. There's a book about writing your novel from the middle, for Pete's sake. Like, so
Right.
everybody, there is someone out there who will get your writing type, will get your personality, and those are great resources to kind of seek out and find, because they just help you refine your process. So anything you can do to refine your own process I think is just going to help you writing wise.
Yeah, and I don't have a process. So I was like, well, I guess I'll try different ways of doing it to see what works best for me. Because I basically got into writing on a whim, because I had a very boring commute during November one year during National Novel Writing Month, and I'm like, hey, I'll write a book. Why not?
Right? That's how it always starts, isn't it?
4 years later.
I'll do that writing thing.
Yeah, it's
It's just like saying, I'll run to hell and grab some groceries and just come back.
Yeah, it was. I
6 years
literally
later.
got into this because I was bored on public transit, which is really not the best way to go into a career.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have.
There's worse ways, Kat.
I know. But yeah, so
That's right. There are worse ways.
The way that I make main characters, the topic of our thing tonight, is I don't have a process, but I am trying to essentially cultivate a process. So, yeah.
We had a little bit more good news trickle in. Of the Wild says that her news is that last week was weekend with fans at is it FurryCon? FurryCon. I always screw that up. I think it's a typo on her part, because I can't wrap my mind around this FurryCon business. But she also got the online novel posted. She'd spent months editing, so that is badass news.
Speaking of online novels, have you guys heard of Amazon's new Write On by Kindle thing?
No.
Yeah, explain
It's
this a
basically
little.
like Wattpad, but their own one, kind of, it seems. Here, I will grab a link to it. But yes. Yeah, it's basically like, at least from what I gathered in the short email I got, it's basically like their kind of version of Wattpad, which is kind of special. Yeah. So no one's heard of that? Just me?
I haven't heard of it. I'm gonna ask
it.
Twitter. I'm asking Twitter right now. Where they heard of it, because
I actually only know about it because my mom sent me an email thinking that I already knew about it. She's like, oh, did you hear about this thing? I'm like, no, but thanks.
Alu Envy also shared some good news I want to share. She said she almost finished up setting up her Amazon author account. Then the first story will be up soon, and that isn't published in the Indie Coils, Story Coils, calls. But anyways, congratulations to Alu Envy. That's a big deal. That's a huge step, getting that author account set up. It's kind of like shit gets real at that point. So.
Yeah.
That's good.
Ooh,
And then when those first couple of reviews come in, then shit gets really real. But
speaking of setting up accounts, I recently was informed that Google Play has actually closed their doors to new vendors this year. So you're essentially, if you're not already on there, you have to wait until they reopen it again.
Well, shit. Shoot, sorry.
So,
No swearing on Twitter land.
of course, because I'm already on there, I can't check if this is an actual thing, but this is what I heard from the Kindle boards and stuff. So, yeah, if you were thinking about going on Google Play to pitch your books, you might have to wait.
Oh, another smash of good news here. The Grey Idris says, and I always love the Grey. These are some of the Wilds, Grey Idris. These are some of our big-time regular Twitter chatters here. She says her good news is that I've officially started something new. You guys remember that NASCAR female romance I mentioned? That one.
Oh,
holy shit! Like that's that's gonna be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And-
weren't we was that a few weeks ago?
Talk about attacking like a.
I remember this conversation.
Yeah, I know she brought it up. Like, I mean, I know that it's been brought up before in the chat, so I think it's a fabulous idea. That's such a great story idea. Talk about your natural conflict, and I feel like rounding back to, main characters and stuff like that. One of those things that you
I'm
have
sorry, I read Simcoe's thing about me taking off my pants.
to. Right. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I laughed. I tried not to laugh, actually. I felt miserably. When you're talking about conflict, like, I think that's really important to me. We had from Alan MV before the chat even started, she was talking about, basically what's important to her when it comes to establishing main characters, and she's like, I don't really care what kind of ice cream they eat, and which I know is kind of like when you do these character sheets, sometimes that's the detail you get into. It's like, oh, what's their favorite color, and what the t-shirts or button-ups or whatever that crap is.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, I just want to know what is most important to them in the whole universe.
Yeah, that principle's what the book that I mentioned by Libby Hawker is. It's basically like kind of it's a 5-step process, similar to her 5-step process for writing book descriptions or query letters. And you start with your character's flaw. And she explains why knowing how they're flawed helps determine the story. And she uses Harry Potter, Lolita, and Charlotte's Web as examples of how the character's flaw shaped the entirety of the story as a way to develop your character. So you start with their flaw, then what they want most, and move through the other things to get to the kind of more minute what ice cream they like.
Interesting.
Well, and I feel like I think that's key. I think to me, to like building an interesting character is the flaws. The flaws are what, like, I think to every character I love, like Harry Potter and Katniss and all these people, these great characters that have been created. Luke Skywalker, like, I mean, the list goes on and on. Honestly, when I think back on them, reflect on them, their flaws are some of the things that jump out to me the most because those are the things they eventually overcome.
Yeah, a lot of those stories also pull heavily from the hero's journey.
Right.
For kind of story arc, which is something they teach in schools here.
Right, and that's a pretty familiar to people that write, definitely people who write fantasy or sci-fi or things like that. And you can apply the hero's journey, formula to any kind of story, really. I mean, it's basically a tri-fail based, formula. You have a mentor at some point that comes in, like, the guru. Again, look at stories like Star Wars, things that are, because all these are built off of like Greek myth, that type of format.
Yeah, exactly. It's just when we learned essentially in English class, when we learned story writing, I didn't learn the normal 3-act structure and other things that a lot of people who have actual writing English degrees learn. We only learned the hero's journey as kind of arc, as opposed to the 3-act structure. So I didn't know this was a thing until about 2 years ago. When someone was saying that my books don't follow that standard 3-act structure. And I was like, huh, probably because I never learned that.
So I put out on Twitter just now, speaking of flawed characters, like what are some of your favorite flaws? Like think about some of your favorite characters. Could be TV, books, whatever. Like what are some of your favorite flaws? Because I love the characters that like the storytelling that kind of makes light of these flaws, like characters that are kind of introspective. Like I think Asuki Stackhouse, and she has a great flaw because like her asset is that she can like read people's minds and hear what people are thinking. It's also one of her greatest flaws. Like it cripples her in a way, and so I think that's genius. Like I think it's a great way to.
The character Spencer Reid in Criminal Minds, his greatest flaw is also his greatest attribute, and that he's extremely intelligent. He has an eidetic memory, but being so smart kind of alienates him from those around him because they can't always relate to him on a kind of even ground. So.
The Grey Idris, some of her favorite flaws and characters are hubris, narcissism, apathy, self-involvement. Apathy is interesting because that could make for a really difficult writing experience. Like I find it much easier to write strong character, like whether that's good or bad. Like just people have very strong emotions or very strong reactions to things. Either like they're hell-bent on saving everyone or whatever. Creating a character who just doesn't give a shit about anything. And I mean, there are some great novels out there.
I can't think of a character that's like that. Like that comes to mind immediately.
I'm trying to think of like like Napoleon Dynamite. Like he's a totally just apathetic character. He doesn't. I mean, I guess he cares about ligers and stuff, but like he doesn't. Like he's an apathetic character. Like he doesn't really care about anything. Like he doesn't. He's not really interested in like getting a girl.
He's just kind of there.
Yeah, he's just kind of there.
Just kind of there.
He loves tots. Yeah.
Self-involvement. I immediately think of either Emma or Cher from Emma and Clueless. That you have a character whose major flaw was being self-involved, and they have to overcome that. So
Yeah.
it was such a great kind of retelling of that story, I think.
Yeah, no, I thought it was genius. I really liked it.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, talk about stories like things that would translate easily into like a new adult type of theme, which I kind of feel like Legally Blonde was kind of like, to me, was like if that story was a new adult story, it becomes like Legally Blonde kind of. But,
it was a new adult story. Yeah. Yeah. No, I thought I thought it was a great story because the character really, really wanted something and didn't care that people were essentially making fun of her. She's like, I'm gonna do this thing. Screw you guys. Have a pink stapler.
yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm trying to think of some of my favorite characters. I'm coming up with a whole lot of nothing.
Character flaws that I like, awkward characters. Characters that are not self-assured, not perfect, not 100% together.
Let's think about
That's all new adult, really. I mean,
exactly. Like, why do you think I like this genre?
Yeah.
And this age category. Because, yeah, awkwardness.
Well,
so much of life is awkwardness.
Think about your favorite TV shows. Think about like
The Walking Dead.
The Walking Dead. Think about
Bachelorette.
Yeah, like The Walking Dead. Like
talk about flawed characters. Holy crap.
Yeah, like everybody on The Walking Dead has.
One of my recent favorite TV shows is no longer my favorite TV show. They Jump the Shark.
Jump the Shark.
Jump the Shark. It's a film TV show term. It comes from the Happy Days.
Oh.
Have you never heard that saying "jump the shark" before?
No.
Yeah. Basically, it's kind of when a show runs out of ideas and they do something that's completely wacky and nonsensical and really just kind of ruins the narrative. And basically, they've run out of story to tell, but the show has to go on. So, and it, had to do with the Fonz jumping a shark in a jet ski.
Oh.
Like, yeah. I'm sorry. I thought that was a normal thing.
No, it's a pretty common terminology.
Okay.
I could, but it actually did. What I love about the expression, is that it did start from Happy Days. Like that's where it started. They had an episode where
They were
Fonzie
jumping the shark.
jumps a shark on his skis, not his jet skis, because they didn't.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, but no, just like his skis, a boat was pulling him, and of course he's like skiing in his leather jacket, or whatever.
Yeah, it was just.
It was totally cheesy, totally out of form for the show. Like had nothing to do with the normal pattern of the show. And it'd been on at that point. Happy Days had been on air. Like I don't know, they'd been on like 8 seasons or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's yeah.
So basically, they didn't have anything else to do, so they.
Or another issue is they need to keep the show on, but one of the main characters has to leave, and they'll end the character in a completely nonsensical way. That's like, why did I even spend the time watching 5 seasons of this show? Kind of thing. So
Simcoe just tweeted that he says some flaws are endearing, and he mentioned like who doesn't love the adorkable hero.
Oh, totally.
I love Adorkable.
I immediately thought of Amy Poehler in Parks and Recreation. Like,
Oh,
her
yeah.
character-
I
Oh,
haven't
yeah.
seen that yet, but I know what you're talking about.
Even Michael Scott from The Office, like.
Oh, yeah.
He's totally an idiot. He's a total dork.
World's greatest boss.
You kind of love him.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's just something so human about the very awkward, unself-assured, flawed character, that really resonates with a lot of people, as opposed to the superhero type that's perfect, which is what made the show Heroes so great, because most of the characters were completely not together with their stuff, and they're supposed to be superheroes,
Oh yeah, here's my thing. I love like the Josh Whedon style of storytelling. Like if any of my stories, they will always have like a cast. It's not just going to be about one character. It's going to be about a bunch of different characters.
Ensembles.
Yes, and so one key to creating, I think, a great ensemble cast, and it's a cue I learned from Harry Potter and several Joss Whedon stories, shows and stuff, is it's a puzzle, and everybody, it's like any good relationship. They all have to accentuate each other. Like they all have to have their flaws. You look at like Ron, Harry, and Hermione, the 3 best friends.
Right.
They all have their unique strengths and weaknesses, and they all fit together, and they kind of create a whole awesome person. And there just lots of dynamics like that, and so I don't think when you start talking about these things that create great characters, main characters, they strictly apply necessarily to just one character. They kind of go through the process. It's like creating a great villain. So you need some of these, sort of the antithesis of some of these qualities, to create great villains. But
yeah, and the book that I was recommending and that I'm going through also has a great thing on building villain characters and the difference between an antagonist and a villain. Because your antagonist can actually be a good character. They're not necessarily the evil scientist type. They can be the person who wants the same exact thing as your main character. So, just, as much as they do, which doesn't necessarily make them a bad character.
Right.
And just as much thought should go into your antagonist as your main character, or your story is going to come off very flat, unauthentic, kind of just unremarkable, I guess.
PK Rezo said that she loves quirky, mental, and unfiltered characters, like think Dr. House.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
I love Dr. House.
Chris Fox also says flawed characters are the best. They're key to good character development. They need to struggle with their own issues to grow, and I agree with that.
When did Fox get here? I didn't see
He's
him.
been on all night.
I didn't see
I
him.
see Fox. He's been here.
All right, cool.
It took me way too long to realize that his avatar is a fox.
Oh, dear
Because
God.
his last name is Fox.
Very clever. So I want to read through this. I found this Your Hero Top 10 Rules. It's on a website called The Script Lab. and I actually found I think it's pretty useful. So number one rule: you must create an interesting protagonist, one that your audience will want to watch, hope, and fear for. Uh, I think that's key. I was just talking about this in our crit group the other day.
Yeah.
You have to have a character that you root for, or that you're in, that, not even that you root for, that you're just interested in, that you'll follow. You know.
Beckatron agrees. Pardon me. She says flaws are great, but if there's no one to root for, I get bored. Case in point, Game of Thrones. Exactly what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah. The book I'm currently reading, the fiction book I'm currently reading, the premise is cool, but when the characters are put in peril, I don't care. Like, I'm just not connecting with them. Whereas the movie I went and saw an advanced screening for yesterday, the entire time I was like, oh god, everyone's going to die, and I was very attached to these characters I knew almost nothing about. And I was trying to determine, kind of analyze why I cared about one versus the other.
Mm.
And I think it was because they put so much effort into making them relatable, human, normal people who are just in a shitty situation. And they have to survive. What would you or I do in similar situation? Versus what would person who has all of these awesome attributes and purple hair and orange eyes and, other special things that people try to do to endear a character to us.
Well, this article goes on, and the next thing they talk about, and so this is key, and this kind of alludes to what I was going to say next, is sympathy versus empathy. So we always talk about, you hear create sympathetic characters a lot, but this actually distinguishes, and I think they're dead on, because you don't have to create a character that people feel sorry for.
Yeah.
To have them be interesting and have people want to root for them. Empathy is different. Empathy just means that they can relate, they can understand the predicament that they're in. The main character from my Serial series, I mean, she's rough around the edges. Like, she's kind of a take no shit, had kind of a rough life, says some nasty things even to her best friend. Like, she's that kind of character, but she's endured enough, like with death in her life and of loved ones and things, that people can, like, they can identify, they can at least feel sorry for her on some level, or they can at least understand why she's so angry. I don't think feel sorry for her is the right word, because nobody really does, but they can understand why she'd be angry or why she would be this way. And I think that's really, really key, is you have to create these traits and characters that people, however they are, whether they're brash or completely paralyzingly afraid, or maddening like Bella from Twilight, that's like indecisive or whatever. But you have to at least give them background and a setup and an emotional place where people can at least understand why they're there.
Yeah, and that was the thing. Whether or not you agree with Bella's choices in the entire story, they made sense for her and they made sense for the story.
Right.
You don't have to agree with the characters to know that they made an authentic decision for their story.
Right.
Ooh, PK just brought up a great point. She's like, anti-heroes make some of the best to root for. She's like, they make great arcs. And that's the truth. Like, these anti-heroes. So think of some classic anti-heroes. Like, she
Wolverine.
Wolverine's
Iron
a great
Man.
one. Yeah, Iron Man's kind of
Doctor House.
They're people that you just kind of, they disgust you in some ways, but you're intrigued by them. Like, they're so interesting. And I think we always secretly root for those moments when they have a little insight or you think they might change. I think that's what keeps us involved. Like Tyrion, somebody brought up Game of Thrones earlier. Tyrion Lannister in Game of Thrones is the perfect anti-hero. People love him. They cheer for him, and he's kind of a disgusting human. Like, he's not a nice guy at his core.
I mean,
he does just enough redeemable
becomes
things.
Like a rootable character,
right?
And he does a very good job in that book/television series of making you hate someone and then making you feel bad for them. Like later where you're like, I want to hate you, but now I feel bad for hating you. With so many characters in that series. Not just Tyrion, but lots of other ones, which I will not mention because spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a character, like a main character, that, and what you think, you talk about like anti-heroes, you talk about like Catcher in the Rye, like he's a perfect example of like this whole book that's built around kind of like this abrasive, like kind of crazy dude. So I mean, it's a pretty commonly used thing. But what about you guys? Like, do you have characters that, like in real life, like can you think of a character like on a show or something that you enjoy like watching on a show or whatnot, but like in real life you would never be friends with them, and you would probably kill them if in real life if you had to spend 5 minutes with them, but you just love them. Because I think of
Oh,
House like that. Like House is one of those guys that like most people would strangle him like in his sleep, but you can't.
Um,
You would watch him all day long.
I'm trying to think of a character, but like
what's Jim Parsons' character on Big Bang Theory? Why am I not? I keep wanting to say Leonard, but that's not Leonard. What's Jim Parsons?
Sheldon.
Who's Jim Parsons? Sheldon. Like I absolutely love watching Sheldon, but you better believe the Penny.
Oh God, I would
Penny,
have
like
punched him
I
out
would
my
die.
Yeah, no. Yeah, straight up that. Yes. With sauce. I'm like looking around my room trying to think of characters. Gosh.
Not that I necessarily would say that Sheldon's a hero, but I mean that's just kind of like
Well,
the first
no, but it's the same thing. He's a rootable character in the show, even though everything about him is irritating. Um, you know, I'm drawing a blank at the moment.
I just wanted
Another question.
I wanted to give a shout out to the book Duchess. She tweeted, but basically I wanted to clarify the book we were talking about, the Write from the Middle book, is called specifically so everybody will have the name of it. It's Write Your Novel from the Middle: A New Approach for Plotters, Pantsers, and Everyone in Between. And it's by James Scott Bell as the author. So I just wanted to.
You know, I actually might have that book. I have
Right.
a bunch of those books.
Oh gosh, Beccatron just mentioned Frank Underwood from House of Cards. He might be
I
the
haven't seen that yet.
the ultimate, like scuzzy hero main character. I mean, that dude he is sick. Like he's just twisted. He's everything you're afraid of in like like in real life politicians. Like you're just like, oh my god, if this is really happening, we're screwed. But you're captivated by him because Kevin Spacey does such a great job portraying him. You have to watch him. Like you have to see, and he does. And I think the key with him, and I think this is key too, if you're going to try to build a story around that kind of character, is he does just enough redeemable things to keep you invested and think, maybe he'll change his colors, maybe he'll change his ways. And he never does. Like, and when he shatters that perception, he does it in fantastic fashion. Like, he doesn't just like do something that you're like, oh man, Frank, really, you did that? That's bad. Like, I mean, he does something heinous that you're like, this guy's the devil. Like, I can't believe I ever thought he could be a nice guy. They're so good.
The character, there's a few characters in Vampire Diaries, the TV show, because I haven't actually read the books yet, who are like that. Damon is like that. You're like, oh, I'm rooting for you. Oh, and now you just did something awful. Why? So, yeah, no, I get that. I have not seen that series, EJ, but it is on my watch list.
Well, another one, too, is if you are a fan of the Sookie Stackhouse books, now if you've seen True Blood, the TV show, his character is not the same in the show. Like he gives a little bit of a hint to it, but it's Eric Northman, like Eric Vampire Eric. In the books, like he's way more scuzzy but you kind of love him. Like you kind of love to hate him, kind of
He's
deal.
very redeeming on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's way more so in the show. Like in the show, they definitely make him much more of a good guy. In the books, he's always pretty fulfilling and stuff like that, but he'll still help Sookie out, and he'll still do the right thing on occasion. It's always to serve his purpose, always. But
yeah,
he will do these things, from time to time.
Yeah, Howl's Moving Castle the movie versus Howl's Moving Castle the book. The Howl in the book is an asshole, like most of the time. You're like in the Miyazaki film, he's so nice. And you're like, why does everyone hate him? Why is everyone afraid of him? Because the book. Yeah, he's kind of an asshole in the book, but you still love him.
So I'm going to get back to our hero list here. So we talked about sympathy versus empathy. Their number 3 tip is acting bravely. So they say we love to see characters acting bravely. So it's not only what the character is trying to accomplish that makes us cheer for him or her, but it's the lengths he or she will go, is willing to go to get it. And I think I love that acting bravely, because this is one of those ones. Acting bravely doesn't have to be saving the world. It can be very contextual for your character. Like if you have a character who's agoraphobic, I mean, just getting out and going to the bus stop, that's going to be a huge journey for them. And what I found as a reader, that'll hook me. Like it can be the most benign thing, but if this character is stepping out of their comfort zone and attempting to do something strong for them, I'm hooked. Like I'll follow that character, and like I said, it could be the most mundane, like weird thing in the world. But if it's an act of bravery in their circumstance, I think it goes a long way. But.
Yeah, I use that simple acts of bravery in my Damon's books. Both the male characters are like that. One of them actually is agoraphobic as well, which is not the fear of people.
Okay.
Yeah, they actually mention that in there because so many people don't understand what that actually means. Agoraphobia. So.
I love what you just said, actually, Kat. Simple acts of bravery.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's like
That's
simple
great.
acts of kindness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read it somewhere. It is in my little cat Rolodex of info. Yeah, basically your character doesn't have to have a goal or challenge that involves life-threatening stuff. It can be as easy as, talking to someone in a coffee shop or something. Whatever's hard for them,
I'm tweeting that out, by the way. I apologize for people I don't want to apologize, because this may be more of our regular norm for audio from going forward, but we are all multitasking on here. We're trying to tweet with you and interact with you and read your tweets and do this audio thing. But we like this, actually. I think this format, it lends itself well to a Twitter chat. It's a little less formal than what we've done in the past, but I think it'll be a way to get you guys that are in Twitter, and listening more involved. So at least we hope so. So we're going to try this out, I think, going forward a little bit more and just kind of see where the casual audio chat takes us and make it kind of more like a radio show type of thing. So we hope you like it.
I'm enjoying it.
Right, we're having a blast.
This one's going to you, Amy.
Oh, Amy's doing crazy stuff today, isn't she? She's busy. Like every time I talk to her.
She's doing this like summer camp thing, she calls it like Camp Dirty Dancing or something. But
no,
she's Dirty Dancing Summer.
Dancing. I don't even know what it is. I'm dying to get her back on air so she can share it.
It's because they're all in those bungalows.
They're bungalows, yeah.
Like in Dirty Dancing, but it's actually about dancing.
Okay.
Or that movie.
I was totally confused. I was like, is she learning how to dirty dance? Like, what is going on?
No, it's because they're out in the Adirondack or whatever.
Yeah.
Wherever they have bungalows, you East Coast people.
New York.
Yeah, that thing.
that state.
That thing where that region of forest where there may or may not be Bigfoot.
Right.
That's the West Coast, I thought, Kat.
I don't know.
Anyway.
Bigfoot's everywhere.
No, I think on the West Coast we have, is it Sasquatch?
Oh, Squatch.
I don't know.
I do
not live near a forest.
This is another huge one that they list here on this little website. Is number 4 is know the dream goal for the character.
Listening to this, it makes me think that they're pulling this from, I think it's 22 Elements of Story.
Could be.
Which is for writing scripts for like movies and shows, which is kind of what Libby studied for her book on doing that we were mentioning earlier in the chat. Like it sounds like a lot of these sound really familiar. I was like, wait a minute, I bet you that's from this book. So.
I'm just tweeting out my thought is, and I really believe this, I think every character even little bitty side characters, even if you don't express it in the story. When you write these characters, like everybody needs a goal. Like everybody needs to want something or have something that's going on within their lives that they want or need. And they don't have to be happy goals. They can be, if they're side characters, they can be really scandalous things. But that is huge. Like you have to know, especially characters that are coming into your story for any length of time at all. You need to know what motivates them, what drives them. And again, it could be carnage, it could be fun stuff, whatever.
Yeah, I believe very strongly as well in the your secondary characters need love as well and attention.
Right.
Even if it never appears on screen, because by making them complete, you're making the environment that your main characters inhabit more real. I pretty much, I think every single named character that I have, like if a character is named in any of my books, I know at least that about them, what their flaw, what their goal is, even if it's never mentioned or relevant to the plot at all, just because it helps me craft my story better.
So my question is to Twitter, I'll ask you guys. Conflict, obviously, to me, conflict's like the heart of the story, period. Mm-hmm. How do you guys go about creating conflict for characters? Does it happen organically for you? Do you just start writing and just things end up causing trouble for them? Or do you have very specific things in mind when you start writing that, this is something this character is going to struggle with?
Both. Like I said, I don't have a clear kind of process or system yet. So some things are completely came out of the blue, and some things I'm like, this is their flaw and this is what they need to overcome. These are the challenges that this character is going to face, and some of it just comes about because it just felt right for the story as I was writing it. So, but most, about 90% of my story is conflict, pretty much.
So, do you find yourself as a writer, Kat? Do you find yourself gravitating more towards internal conflicts or external conflicts, or do you try to balance it at all, or do you just let it come?
I don't try to balance it, but it ends up about 50-50. Maybe more internal conflict, and by internal I mean more not kind of their decision kind of internal conflict, but I don't know, do you classify interpersonal relationships as external or internal conflict?
I think it depends on what's going on in the relationship, to me.
Okay. Well, depending on which way that falls, most of my stories are about people and the decisions that they make.
Me, so you could be talking about love in one sense, and it would be an internal conflict, like an emotional conflict. However, if this love, the way it's manifesting itself is sexually, well, then you're starting to talk about an external conflict of sorts. So
yeah, that's why I say, most of my stories are predominantly the decision, people and the decisions they make is really what it can be boiled down to. How their decisions affect others, how their lack of decision, their indecisiveness affects others, how their fears affect them and others. Everything's kind of, the chain reaction that one decision they make has on everyone else.
Right.
So some of them are internal conflicts that become external, and some of them are external that become internal.
And I feel like for me personally, if I'm in the writing groove, whatever the hell that is, if I'm really in tune with the characters and the story, a lot of that just happens. Because I think that's how we work in real life, is we sort of vacillate between these, like you said. Things just tend to be, they boil over in life. So things that are, an internal struggle for you tend to manifest eventually into anger or whatever. If you're really in conflict internally about something, you're eventually going to lash out, or you're going to have trouble with your boss, or you're going to do whatever.
Exactly, yeah.
And
just
so,
like in real life. Same as in the book. Yeah, I do it the same way. It's... yeah.
This is a great point by Pat Esden. She said she likes to ask, what is the worst thing or situation a specific character could end up in?
Ooh.
Yeah,
I do that too to my
Yeah.
poor characters. I feel like a terrible person. It's like, what evil thing can I do to them? Oh, that thing? They're most afraid of that. I'll do that.
And that's truly, truly huge. Finding that one thing that they fear most, because, or you know, whatever the thing that would hurt them most. That's a great. People struggle sometimes with like, what's the climax of the story or whatever. That's usually a great place to start. Is think about that worst thing. Think about that dark moment for that character. What could it be? If you can nail that down, that's a long way toward having an engaging story.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you can nail down, like I said, that fear factor for a character, because it also goes the other way. I mean, you definitely need to know what it is they most want in the world and what would make them the happiest.
And it has to, yeah, and that thing that they want can't be something simple and arbitrary, you know, that you just have because it made sense, you know,
right.
for whatever. It has to kind of permeate all of the characters, you know, being. Like, you know, if they have an external goal that just seems disingenuous to the character, readers are going to notice right off the bat. They're not going to become attached to your characters. If kind of the character comes off as not real, like you just colored them in with crayons.
Right. Chris Fox actually had a wonderful little comment here. He says, make them question their own decisions. Talking about, I asked how do you create conflict in your characters, and he basically says, make them question their own decisions and struggle with their actions. So was killing that bad guy a good thing? And I think that is key. I think don't just let them go through the paces of doing something and just rolling on with their lives. Make them second guess themselves.
Yeah, I use that a lot. Where decisions they've made in one book are still affecting them books later. Just like it would something that hard in your life would affect you.
Right.
I think that Susan Collins did a great job in the Hunger Games series of everything that Katniss had done. The entire series kind of continued to affect her. Every little thing that she did. There was no, I'm done with this challenge and it's done and I can put it on a shelf and it was just constant onslaught of things you thought she was done with dealing with or coming back to bite her.
Well, and that even started with when they were training for the games and how they interacted with people affected how they were in the arena, and it was all life or death. So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be life or death for that kind of thing to happen to your character. What if their horrible situation is like talking to a girl and they didn't talk to her, and now she's with their friend. Like, it can be something super simple that seems completely unextraordinary that can have a large arching impact on your character. It doesn't have to be everything's blowing up and everyone's dying.
And I'm getting some interesting tweets. Pat Esden basically said that I'm asking about if people plan their conflict, like their internal versus external, that kind of deal, and she basically said she plots out like a very specific hero journey with definite plot types of twists and things like that in these measures. And then I've gotten a couple of responses, one from Chris Fox, one from Paris Marks, that basically says, Paris Marks says he finds some in the original plan, but most develop itself organically during the writing process. So I think it can all work for sure. I think it is important to always remember, if we get stuck writing something, that we can move out of our normal process. That has helped me before, and both ways. Like, sometimes it's helped me to get really structured. if I'm really struggling to get started on getting back into something or whatever, sometimes like what I'm doing right now, I'm using Scrivener to go through and like really detail each chapter and all this stuff. And it's from a story I outlined, but I'm at the point now like I have these very specific things I want to accomplish in the story at this point, and so I'm kind of just breaking it apart. But I've also had stories where I needed to do the opposite thing, where I needed to let go of some of that crap and just write, just put stuff down to really get back into the vibe of who the character is, let the characters kind of speak to you a little bit and that kind of thing. So
I find it's really the project, which book I'm working on which being more stringent with plotting or less stringent helps. I'm both. I'm what do they call it? Disorganized creative type, but I also have mild, like more than moderate OCD. So I'm kind of always splitting the difference between the two.
Chris, I have to share this tweet. Then we're over our time, so we have to close off here. But Chris Fox says we should also note that we tell because Michael Simcoe was grousing about like sort of the dark turn to, plotting and these characters and this stuff, and he said, Fox says we should also note that we tell them more mature stories than they used to. Exploration of depression and sadness is more raw. And then, of course, Simcoe tweets back, what happened to the good old days of boobies and bad decisions?
I just read that.
I think you're thinking of like...
You adult, Michael.
I think you're thinking of Animal House, Michael. But, well, anyways, I think it's about our time to sign off here. Pat Esden had a great
on that
tweet.
Lovely note of,
Pat had a great tweet, though.
storytelling.
Pat tweeted, she said, boobies will always cause conflict.
Yeah.
Especially when Michael's
Entire
involved.
comic that's just busty girl problems. That's
Totally.
the entire narrative of this comic.
Oh, God. Well, anyways, this has been NA Lit Chat. I'm EJ Wesley. We have
I'm
Kat
LK
Vincent.
Lewis.
Yeah, there's OK there. Kat's here.
Cat Fencer.
We have Chris Fox out in the audience. He's also one of our regular participants. And honestly, everybody here tonight, Michael Simcoe, Pat, these are people of the Wilds, all these people.
PK.
PK, they come to this chat regularly. Some of them have been coming, off and on for 3 years now. So this is our group. This is what we do. We meet every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Sometimes we have audio even, like now, and we just talk about stuff. But it's always writing focused of some kind, and, we like to have a good time. So from everybody at NA Lit Chat, we appreciate you listening and tweeting, most of all. And we'll be back with you next week. Good night.
Have a good night, guys.
Bye.